with a suit.
Mm.
And then you also see Black Lightning, which is the husband, which is weird.
Mm-hmm.
And then you know that the daughters are going to come into their powers. So you kind of like, is this like The Incredibles or like what the hell? Like I don't understand.
You see now if
But
it's
the
all
thing
of
about
them.
it also is that
Yeah.
one of the oldest daughter and the mother look identical. I don't know if they're actually related or if it's just like
Happenstance.
it happens, but like
Yeah.
they look like they're related. They
Okay.
look like sisters.
Okay, let's go to
That's
UV
insane.
mapping.
So I'm gonna keep watching
This is
this.
so good. You really have to watch it. Oh my god.
Is it like
Download-
on Netflix or
just-
something?
No, download CW. Download the CW app and it's free. The first episode.
After 14 seasons.
I'll be right back.
Adam Savage, if he and co-host Jamie Dimon will continue working together.
I think it's just
I remember that.
you one of the assets that we built because we're giving them the live codes, and if they're picking something that wasn't one of the ones they just built, they had to but I think it has to be from that. Yeah. Okay.
Ouch. 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 I thought they were good friends.
You know, I hate when that happens when you think that they're actually like, okay, like this is gonna sound cheeky. When I was,
This is what I have.
When you were?
when I was,
Okay, so
did you watch Disney?
essentially, okay,
I did.
Okay.
Spent like Brandy, Mr. Whiskers,
just
Lilo and
roll,
Stitch,
uh,
Kim Possible. Wait, Kim
okay,
Possible was from Disney. Just want to make sure. And what else was
So
that other show?
I
Well, not
understand.
that young, but like okay.
Can I
Not that
just
young.
go down
I was
here,
watching.
Fast forward a little
click
bit.
here,
A little bit. I was watching Shake It Up.
and click
Remember.
Sunday
I
and
know
Bella
that,
Thorne. I thought that they were actually really good
this
friends because
is
in the
supposed
show,
to
like, they have really
essentially
good chemistry.
be
Now it's like
They're not.
they
You don't.
barely even talk to
similar,
each other.
You don't. Wait.
I
Bella Thorne
believe,
was
in
the
shape
brunette,
and
right?
No, she was the redhead.
size to
Redhead.
Zendaya's.
So,
Just
Zendaya.
just
Um,
back it up.
You don't even see her anymore.
So I'm also trying to understand
No.
how it is that
Zendaya,
I
the-
can
The brunette.
um
Well, me personally, I haven't
You're
like,
You're trying to sew them together?
yeah, not only sew them together, but align them up properly, and then eventually hide the seam. Because the seam was on one of the sides, and he was able to fix it so that
Under,
the seam
well,
was
I
on
actually
the
did,
bottom.
yeah.
Mhm.
Not to
Because he
mention,
was
yeah, I
like
did see
doing like
that.
a camera
Other than
analogy,
that,
like
I
the
haven't
cameras
seen
are
her
going
anywhere
around it.
I've been
It
living
would
under
make
a
sense for the
rock.
seam to be at the bottom where it's
Well,
not
she just
in
said
the
it.
view
Bella
of the
Thorne.
Right.
camera.
So
She
let's,
showed
let's
up
see
in
where your
like that
seams are.
babysitter movie from Netflix.
Okay, so rotate around.
Yeah.
Okay, so your seams are on the back part right now,
Again,
and you want it on the bottom,
So the
Do you
right?
seam
think
is
the
right
people
there.
that have good
Yeah, the
chemistry?
seam's going across back here rather than
Okay.
down here. So if you want it on the bottom,
Emotionally
you first just need to figure out where that is on the object.
Okay.
So go into edge mode and just double click on it to see where that is on the
What
shells.
was her name?
So
the
we
one
need to
from
cut it
Jessie, the one who
here
played
and
as
here,
Jessie.
basically.
Okay, so how would you go about cutting it here? Wait. How
I'm not
did you
mistaken.
discover? So if the seam's there,
Her name's actually
why
Jessie-
did you click
Jessie
on
something.
on another spot? If I
Or I
may
think
ask?
that
So
was
if I have it selected here,
Hang on.
it's going through more than just those shells on the object. So it's going up into the front too, and I don't want that. So I was just selecting it here to see where it is. on this
Oh,
one.
okay. So you're just picking an example.
Yeah, I was just picking here to know exactly
What's
where
her
I'm
name?
selecting on this object.
Okay. But you could, if you
So-
wanted to, click on the theme, the seam, because I know that the seam is pretty thick. It's the one that's.
Well, the seam is already cut, so I'm not worried
Yeah,
about
she
cutting
showed
right now.
up in,
I want to
like,
cut this part first, and then I'm going to sew this part onto the other piece.
She showed up in like
Okay,
the,
so
the,
so if
Sweet
if
Life
there's
of
a
Zack and
visible
Cody on
seam,
the
you
ship.
essentially want to cut another seam.
Yeah, so all
What's
we're
her
doing
name?
is taking the seam and putting it in a different spot.
Okay.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going
Debbie
to cut
Ryan.
it where I want the seam to actually go,
She actually
and the
quit.
other
Okay.
part where the seam is
She quit the
currently
show.
at that I don't want,
Because
I'm going to
Disney was
sew
giving her
that
shit
onto the other
at the
No, I
side.
know. I know.
So if this
Okay.
is where the seam is, where I want the seam to be, and
Yeah,
right now it's
Disney
actually
is
over
like-
here, what I would do is select that
Disney,
edge, go to polygons,
when they
cut
have
UV
something
edge,
going for
and that'll
them,
cut it. So now I
and
have a
it's nice and
separation there,
friendly,
so it's
'cause you know how
technically
Disney
two
is, they wanna
shells.
appeal to young
And then all I have to do
audience,
is
right?
select this
If
one,
something threatens
polygons again,
how
and then I
that
have move and
looks,
sew UV edge, and
they
it'll
will give
snap
you
it to
shit
that
for
other
it.
side.
They're
So now my seam for that part is down here rather than over here on the side. So then I need to do the same thing on this piece and on this piece out here.
If you get far enough into the
Okay,
process,
so then with this one, we can just highlight over until we find that it's at the exact same spot. And then polygons, and then which one do I click?
I know, but even if you have something so
Aren't you gonna
tiny,
cut
so
UV
minuscule
edges?
that
Yep.
It's stupid.
So I'll
but it's
cut
not
that,
stupid.
And then this one needs to be sewn over to that
essentially
side.
have to
So
be, like,
which one of these am I clicking on?
Perfect Christian.
I think it's
not Christian.
so
you have to be
UV edges, correct?
freaking
So
perfect
UV
for
edges
them to
works
hire
if
you.
you push them together manually. For this
Okay.
one, we want to do move and sew
That's why
because
they
it's
usually
literally
hire
snapping
kids
it
for
to
their
that other
shows.
side.
That's
Okay,
why
so
they
if you
usually
do
hire kids
that-
for their
Yep,
shows.
and it just pops it over. And now we have our seam going down this part. So the seam is still off on this one, and we want it to be down here. So let's see where that is on this. So
Yeah,
that's this
and then
huge shell
there's
here.
That
Hello?
huge shell right
Yeah,
there.
so we'll do the same thing.
Okay.
We do our cut,
That was so fun.
select this piece, and then we do our move.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
No,
And then
that one part,
essentially, what you get is now. Does it make it the same
One time
size?
you
Because
will
it
go
is
to-
much smaller on the
to a
scale.
bathroom.
It's not going to scale it,
and
so
you
you
will
have to
find a
scale them
sensor.
afterwards.
Okay, so scaling is a manual
and then you will be
thing.
sitting
Yep.
there like, oh my God, what
And
they
it's
call that?
better
I
to
love
just
his
do
facial
it when
impression.
you have
They're
all
so
the
dead on. He sounds exactly like a
UV
woman.
selected,
If you were
correct?
talking
Yeah,
to
you
him on
just
the phone
select the
and you
UVs
put
and then
he
you
would
scale
not
it.
tell
Now-
You can also go to shell mode and scale it that way too.
Does it?
Oh, the
Okay,
Burger
so I
King
was
thing,
thinking,
when I got his order,
does it
he
help
just
to
went
put
out
it
back.
above?
And it's like,
Or
oh my
is-
God.
Doesn't matter for right now, because right now you're just generating the shells. Once you
then,
have
like,
all
you
them
rolled up,
generated,
and
that's
then
when you're going to go
everything
and
was
place
like-
them manually.
Okay.
Are you
Wait a
gonna,
minute.
like,
So
just order
you're
it,
talking
and
about
he's
like actually like aligning everything up properly.
And I'm like,
Okay, so let me just make that a little.
Yep. And when you're scaling them, you're not trying to match this to that size. You're matching the square size to the square size on the other piece.
Okay, so.
What do you mean?
Okay? Because right now, like with all of these being the exact same size, you see
Yeah.
how this object has a lot more squares than this one?
Uh,
That means that this one has
some
more
of them
pixel
can,
area
but
on
it's
it.
like,
So is that
It's
bad
not
for you?
ideal.
like to
Yeah.
be able
Okay,
to
so
do, like,
then-
a-
Yeah, because it means
like,
that
dead-on
you have a
female
higher
voice, you need to have,
resolution
like,
on
a
this
voice
part
like
than you do
Buffy,
here.
like,
So if you had a
it's
logo
not
going
deep,
across
but it's
this,
not-
it'd be
it's not
very
deep, but it's not
pixelated
high
here and
either.
very clean here.
Okay, how would I go about then
'Cause
fixing
Fluffy
an
has a
issue
pretty
like
balanced
that?
voice.
Then you select it and you scale it down, and you try to match the square size here
That
and
and
here.
practice.
Okay, so how do I determine? Like, wait a minute. What?
You're literally going for a 1-to-1. So the square size here should be the exact same as the square size here.
And
So you just select the shell and then you
You know what?
scale
I'll
it.
split mine in half and then you'll get my half.
I'm only changing this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So-
Also, do you see how these are rectangular?
Yeah.
So you want those to be squares,
Okay.
not rectangles. So what you want to do is select that and scale it outward,
Kind of like
and that will stretch these
kinda
back
like
into
that
squares.
singer
Okay, so
that,
this is a pretty
that
good
Noah was playing in the
size.
apartment.
Yeah, that's about what
The
you want.
trench
So now we'll do the same thing to this one. So double click on the shell right there in the middle.
Right here.
Yep. So I believe that's that one.
Nick Patera.
Only okay.
So now we're going to scale that one up.
So
So
just
if
pull
you-
it out.
So with this, they were already pretty much squares. So now you're adding distortion. So that's why they're going at rectangular. So Z back.
Oh, okay. So Z back.
Okay. So instead, we already have squared off pieces. So you want to scale it from the center.
Oh.
Yep. The individual handles will add or fix distortion.
Okay.
The center just makes it larger or smaller.
Um.
And these are never going to go perfectly into each other. That's why we have the seams there. That's why seams are a problem, because they never match. So what you want to do is just make sure that the squares on this size and the squares on this size
Because I thought
are about the
I thought he
same.
was that other
This is
guy
kind
that
of
got in
like
trouble for,
disappearing, but this square is almost similar in size, somewhat.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, and you're just trying to eyeball it to get it to be as close as you can. It doesn't have to be like 100 perfect thing.
okay.
Okay.
Okay, and now this right here, is it kind of the same thing?
Yeah, so it's about the right size, but it is squished, so you need to make it wider.
So then that would call for this tool then, correct?
Yep.
Just pull it out and then essentially just.
Yep, just trying to square it
Okay.
back
There
off.
you go.
So this actually looks a bit squared. I understand that it's never going to be perfect, but I'm kind of using this as a reference to like
Right.
help me identify everything. Okay, this actually looks good on this side too,
Mhm.
and even on.
The
So my
the
seam is
blonde
now at the
chubby
bottom,
boy.
Yep.
all because I moved
All I
these
know is
things
that I love her. She's
correctly.
like my favorite girl.
So
Well, because of how we cut it.
Okay.
Because remember, we cut them and we sewed it onto the
Oh,
other
yeah.
side.
I
Yeah.
haven't seen like
Yeah.
Pitch Perfect in a
So
while.
that's
I just remember
Alright.
her because she's like
Yep,
my
and then you
favorite
scaled them,
girl.
which made them all look good.
okay. So this is essentially like all that I need to do per se.
For that part, yeah. So
Okay.
then if we look at this piece, let's see what this is.
I believe that's
So
the-
this is the entire front part.
Okay.
So with all of that, you've got this straight line which shows that you did a cylindrical map on it.
That's why
But
usually
most of those
on there's
faces are
4
actually
cores,
completely
so you
flat
don't
from
have
the side,
bounce
right?
alright.
So instead of doing a cylindrical map, you'd want a planar map on those. Okay? And you'd want to do the same thing on this, which I believe is the base on that side.
You know what?
When you say
split mine and
Yeah,
planar
that's
map.
these faces right inside there.
So I have to highlight those faces.
Yep, you just select the faces and then you do a planar map. So
Okay.
we just come in here, go to face mode, select over the area we're going to be working on,
Okay, and then
then
just
UV, planar, and then which direction are we doing it in? X, Y, or Z?
if I'm mistaken, that is the X.
Yes, perfect.
That's X.
So we just throw it into X, hit project, and we just move that out the way.
Okay.
So it's going to be really hard to see if these are matching up to the same size because of like how small that area is. So what I like to do is turn
Isn't
on
it
this
usually
one here.
best is just kind of like
what you mean to tell me
not
is that if
delete
you would
the
do that
objects, but make
impression,
them
that was like
visible.
Yeah, you
talking
can
on the
hide
phone,
stuff
but
like
I
that.
can't tell the
So
difference.
what we can do is go to object mode, select this whole,
But he could
Okay.
do multiple different voices, not just the same.
and then we can
I
do
feel
it.
like
But we
he's
still
the one
only
who
have
pulled
a
that
few
pretty
faces
much
there,
like,
so it's
oh
still
my
going to
God,
be
let me
kind
get
of
my
hard to
Jesse
see it.
voice, like,
But we
voice.
should be able to guess.
Hi, it's Jesse. How may I talk to you?
So about here, looks like this is more or less the same size as that. So that works. If you ever need more squares, you can also click on this icon right here. This will throw an overlay checker on it, and you'll have a lot more little squares that you can see. So it can help. And what's nice about that one is once you deselect the object, so if we just click out, it goes away and comes back when you click on it again. Okay. And
Wait,
to see the seams show up on the object, I just clicked this
Yeah.
button here. And that
Did you know
turns
that
it on
she's
and off.
actually going to be
Cool.
consistent?
Okay. So then you just need to do the same
Does not
planar
look
map on
sexy.
this one
She
here,
looked
and then
on
you
my
should be
page
set.
yesterday.
So
We're
essentially,
driving
this is going to become a circle.
A circle just like that, yeah, because we're looking at it flat rather than round.
So if I just go,
So you have
an
to be
object.
in, and you know you can right click
She
on it,
looks like
right?
she.
Right
To
click.
switch to the different
Yeah,
modes.
Oh, I didn't
Yeah,
know.
just like with the
She's
objects,
in
you
her,
can
like,
just hold down
mid-
right click and then you have vertices, faces, objects.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
How can you tell me
I like that. So if I just go to UV editor.
Well,
Look at
that's
that.
oh,
what this is.
1958.
Oh wait.
So you need
okay,
to
I'm
do the
already-
mapping. So we're going to generate a map.
What?
Yeah, so I go
So-
to planar.
Yep.
That's what I have to go to, and then essentially
I
just
feel
keep
like
it. Okay,
she's
it's already
funny.
there.
Yep.
And then that is.
I don't know what.
Oh, I think it was already
gave her a lot of
applied.
shit when she came
Yep.
out with
Okay.
this baby. I don't know why.
Wait a minute.
So did you select the faces or did you select the UVs?
Oh, I selected the UV.
Yeah,
so
you
I have
need
to go.
faces.
But like,
Okay, so then I gotta go.
like,
So
double
hold,
click.
hold down right
like
click
when,
on it.
when she came
Oh,
out.
alright. I'm
and
gonna
I
need
think,
my
come
pen
to think
for
of it,
this.
didn't she have
Okay.
like troubles with her wife?
Because holding it like
I'm
this
pretty sure
mouse
she
pad
had like
isn't
marital
that.
problems
that
with her
good.
wife. I remember that. My mom
Okay,
was talking about
so
So right click.
that. She had marital problems with her wife.
okay, holding. I'm pressing down on the right. So I know that I made the front.
I don't know if they
button.
fixed it or if they got a divorce. I don't know.
Okay.
We're still together? Oh, they probably fixed it.
Right.
Hopefully they fixed it.
Okay. I
Honestly,
think
like
I should
when I was
now
a
be
kid,
able
I used to be
to-
into actors, what they were doing and all that stuff. But then like
So it's working as a left click.
it
So
got
if you set it
repetitive
up
to
to
me
where it
very
needs to
quickly
actually click
because
down,
So if I
the way
just-
it sets by default on this thing
Okay.
is
Well, I'm
that
just
you
gonna
pretty
go
much
to
have
kids,
to
everybody was
you have
into
to
drugs,
click
everybody
down on the
got,
button
like,
and then click down,
DUIs,
and then it'll
it's
work
like-
most of the
Okay.
time. You can't like click down and then switch. So click on it and then click down.
That's a disaster waiting to happen. That's a disaster waiting to happen.
Cool. So then switch over to faces. Yep, and then you're just gonna marquee select over that section. So click and then drag over it.
You know, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
They made songs.
Yeah. If you're in
Uh,
UV mode, you can double
They
click,
made
but face
songs
mode, you
against
have
each
to
other.
marquee over it.
Like,
Okay, so this is face
what was it,
mode.
like,
Yep. So now we need to do the map.
What was
Okay,
it called
so
again?
let's just rotate this so I can see
Mhm.
exactly what it
I
is
don't
I have
remember
to
the
do.
album, but I'm trying to
So I
remember the song.
think
Like,
it's,
like
uh,
So
right
remember,
now,
it's-
you
it
know
needs
that
to be flat.
SpongeBob scene when they're all
Go
running
to
around in the
UV.
brain right now? It's
Yep.
like
and
it's like a guy
planar,
going into it and just
and
going
then
through the
keep it
files.
there.
It's like,
Now hit apply.
where is it? Where is it? Right?
And if I exit
Like, I'm
out,
trying
I
to
should
remember,
see that it's now that.
Yep. So it generated
Yes.
it, but they're a little
I
bit
don't know
larger
why,
than the
but,
squares
like,
over
my
on that
brain
one.
has been, like,
Yeah,
out
So
of
let's
whack.
go hit. Oh, that looks good.
Yep. So you're just gonna scale it until they're more or less correct.
Yeah. It is a little smaller, but the squares themselves look as if they're the same size as the squares here.
Yep. So that's fine.
She does that.
All right then. So then,
You,
what I essentially have
You
to
sometimes do that.
highlight
you
everything,
wake up,
make
you
it
wake
small,
up,
and then
you're
put
like,
it into
"Should I eat
the.
breakfast?"
Yep.
Nah, man,
So the
So-
way that I like to
fucking
do it is
breakfast.
once I've generated all my shells and they're all out in space, I take
Yeah.
all of the objects because
You're
all
not
of those objects
Yeah.
need to
like
fit in
me.
the 0 to 1
When I just
together
wake up
Should I-
and
wait,
say,
should I-
wait,
from that piece.
What should I stay
feel
in
like
face
this.
mode or should I stay
Why?
in this
This
mode?
makes
Which
no
mode do I go?
sense.
For this, I like to do it in shell mode,
So then
which
I-
isn't one of the ones up there.
So then I.
So you're gonna hold down right click.
Okay, so much like before,
Yep.
For some reason, she gets like kind
do I
of.
have to click on a particular object here?
It depends on how you have it set up on your
Okay,
mouse.
so I have it like this.
But it usually
Click,
like comes
okay,
back.
Yep,
so-
and then go to shell. Let me see it. I want to see how it's set up.
Okay, so we got it. It's
Got it.
very weird. It takes a while. It lags.
Okay.
So shell.
Yep, and then literally you just select over them. And it'll work kind of like face mode, but now it's treating each one of those like an object.
Okay, so I just now it's highlighted in the orange,
Mhm.
and then so I
And then
just
you scale them all
I'd
down
say
at the
like,
same
say,
time.
3 days.
okay.
But this is made of multiple objects, right?
Uh-huh.
So let me see. I want to show you kind of how I would go about doing this.
Does it make sense that they all like get small?
Yeah, the squares are going to correlate to the size of the shells, so they're going to get smaller. And you don't have to worry about that because you already know they're good when they're large. So they're not going to be messed up when they're small. But the thing you want to keep in mind with
Even
this,
if it's something small, I still force myself to.
Yeah,
Like this morning, I just had like.
is it you have
butter
touch
and
turned
cheese
on?
sandwich with OJ, and
Let's
that's
turn
it.
touch off if we can.
Headphones?
Touch settings. Can't turn it off from there. Cool.
We still deciding.
I don't know. I don't think I'm gonna because I had
I kind of want to eat McDonald's, but like the thing is that like I want McDonald's
I
to serve
wanted
like,
ribs.
lunch when I want them to, you know?
Well, they aren't serving lunch when there's. Oh no,
Tablets.
because it's still breakfast for them.
They don't switch to lunch until like 11, I think, and
How
it's
can we
annoying as
disable
hell.
touch?
Oh my god.
Like, dude, like start
Well, their
just.
breakfast is. Well, no, it's not. It's not that great.
Their breakfast is alright.
Yeah, I don't
I
see it
always
there.
get the same
If you
thing. It's like
order-
I always
Alright,
get, like,
so
the-
I would definitely find out how to turn off
what's it called
the
again?
touchpad.
Um,
That way it doesn't activate whenever you touch the actual thing, because that's what's going to make it crazy. That's why whenever you're trying to do your right clicks, it's not working.
I gotta turn off.
So I'm not going to use it because I don't know how to turn that off. But with mine, it's one of the buttons up here. So you might want to just run the gauntlet of clicking the buttons and see
I
what
gotta
turns it
turn
off.
off here.
It may also be one of the
No.
ones over here on the side.
No, wait a minute. What if it's this one right here?
It might be.
So that way the tablet
Let me
doesn't
see.
pick it up.
There you go, perfect.
And then I
So-
gotta
So now
turn
it should work.
computer.
So
hey,
now,
I can't-
yeah.
I can't
Computer
touch
can
it.
pick up.
So now you can do your right click and it's a lot easier.
Oh, hey, that's beautiful.
Yeah. So
Wow, it's so simple.
Too much work.
so when you're done with it,
Actually,
Okay.
if I can get there we
what's
go.
the volume all the way up here?
So all of these objects, when selected,
that?
all of
All the
those
way
are
up.
going to
It
fit inside the 0 to 1
volume.
space together. So right now with this one, all I would do is take it and move them all out of the way.
I was like,
So
what?
I'd select those, shift select these, and just move it over here for now.
Hang it up.
And try to keep them relatively well stacked. So something like that for
There
now.
you go.
Then finish doing those and move them into their correlating spots. Once that's done, take all of your shells and assemble them out in space into like a square type object. Then
Dylan,
select over everything at the same time and scale them all to fit inside the 0 to 1.
Yeah, one thing
Do
he
it.
also did.
Mhm.
Do it.
Okay, let me go here. Let me see
There we go.
if I can find.
Yeah, it tells me.
here. Okay, so
Alright,
after.
so now that that's connected,
Yeah,
what do you want me to watch?
the
This
cutting. I think
This
that's
one
what we
or this
already
one?
covered.
Mhm.
Have you
Correct.
seen them, Mr. Alpha?
I have
And
not,
then
actually.
Oh, well,
yes, this right here. Yeah, I was trying because he was able to actually
I'm not even
take
gonna
one
look,
of them and
'cause I'm not good at looking
bend
at
them
people's
some way.
faces.
He was able to curve them.
I'm just
Was he unfolding it
I
to smooth it out?
yeah, like the smooth UVs tool and the unfold 3D tool are great
Mhm.
at finessing our UV shells to improve layout. I don't know how to do that. And I
Yeah.
was wondering how exactly we go about doing that because he said that it's usually like works like when you're trying to like I don't know how he set it.
Okay, so if we had something like this, let's zoom in on it here. So all I did was do a planar map on it from the side, and I'm going to cut it
What is this?
on the center line. So let's do,
Sounds like a woman.
come on. Yeah, it's not going to work if I do it that way. Nope, wrong button.
I feel like I'm
Cut
gonna cry if I
UVs.
keep listening to it. Even
So now
though
if I go
don't
to
cry
shell
easily,
mode, I have
actually-
two shells
It's
here.
a lot of effort for me to cry.
Or at
It's
least
so
I
much-
should.
feel like only like a handful of things actually make me cry. Like the movie Spirit.
There we
Have you
go.
ever seen the movie Spirit?
Okay, so I've got these two
That movie
shells.
makes me cry.
If
E.T.
I
makes me cry.
throw,
Really? I've never seen it.
I can get this
I do
working.
want to.
What?
I've never seen it.
Okay, so
E.T. like when I first watched it, as a kid, looking at ET, that gave me nightmares. But as I
No,
grew
don't wanna do
older,
that.
I got less and less scared.
That's why when I was younger, I didn't watch it because I thought it would.
I don't know why, but like the movie
There we
when I
go.
was a kid.
So
always
right
got me
now there's a
scared
lot of
because the
distortion on
ending
it,
always
but I
got
do
me-
have my two different shells.
And what?
So if I wanted to
What?
smooth those out to
Scared
make it so
first?
that there's less distortion, I could use either of
Used
those
to it,
tools that Steve
crying.
was talking about. So we just select over our shell. And the first one is going to be an automated process. It's the Unfold 3D, which is under polygons. And all you want to do is make sure you have Unfold 3D as an option. If all you see is solver settings and down, it means that the Unfold plugin isn't set up. So you just need to go into Windows, Settings and Preferences, and Plugin Manager, and then go and
It's
turn
not
it on.
AWS,
And it's literally called Unfold 3D. So once you've got that
That's
turned
nice to
on,
know.
yeah,
This
so once you
man
turn it on,
Yeah.
you just
is
close
an
this,
entire
pop open
Disney
the Unfold
chorus
again,
in one.
and you should have this Unfold 3D method. Turn off Pack, and then hit Apply and Close. And then we'll unfold it. It's basically going through and
Why hasn't Disney
making
called
it
this
as
man
flat as
yet?
it possibly can with its own algorithm.
Let me
and
guess,
Does
he
this help
turned them
when
down?
painting in Maya?
Wait, it helps to get rid of distortion. So how you remember how you had those rectangles and you were scaling it to get rid of it?
Yeah.
That was a manual process. This is an automated process. So sometimes
Jesus
one will
Christ,
work
that
better than the
heavenly
other
Christ.
because this will usually get you relatively funky shapes.
Okay, so it's literally
What was
just
that?
basically like
was
more
that?
than one way to skin a cat.
Pretty much, yeah. It's just another way to do it. And from the side, like, it looks beautiful.
Okay.
From here, it is a little bit distorted, so that may not necessarily be the best way to do it.
Okay.
So another way we could do it, so let's Z back to undo the thing. And then we're going to go in here and we're going to use the Smooth tool. And with the Smooth tool, this one is a little bit of an in-between for manual and automatic. So it's still running the same algorithm, but you have control over it. So you have this Unfold and Relax. Relax just crushes the mesh, so it's not typically very useful. Unfold, however, will let you basically go through and it tries to smooth it out as best as it possibly can. And you basically just do this until it stops updating. And now we'll scale it back down. And it's giving us a very similar shape to what we had from the other Unfold tool. Sometimes they will end up being the same. Sometimes you get drastically different things. So what you want to do is try out both and see which is going to work better for you. And as you get used to doing these things, you'll typically have one of those two that you'll rely on more often. The downside to this tool is if you have it selected and you deselect something, it typically will not let you select over things. It is doing it now because I'm trying to show you it not working, and it's going to work when I do that. Because that's how Maya works. But lots of times, like, students will have that tool active and they won't be able to select things. So keep that in mind. Like, if you can't grab things, just come over here and go back to your regular cursor, and you should be able to grab things again.
Okay.
Okay?
And this is also like similar to ironing out something.
Yeah, it's basically like ironing a t-shirt.
Oh,
This
okay.
one is just a manual way. Imagine if you went to grab, like, you set the iron on the shirt, you turned it on, and then you had a slider, and you were like, do your thing, and then
it's
it
just
did it.
going back and forth, and you're just sipping a nice tea or something.
Pretty much, yeah. The other way, using polygons and then going down to Unfold, that's more of an automated do thing, and then it does it. Okay? So it really doesn't have you as the process. So imagine if you had like a machine that you could throw it in for
Okay.
ironing.
Yeah, so these will help me when I'm gonna be applying something to the pepper.
Does the voice of spirit, because
So this kind of thing would be useful if you had an object that wasn't really easy to tell which method would be best for it. So if I had something, let me build something real quick.
that caught me off
Okay,
guard.
so
Wait,
let's
who else?
throw this over
Sergeant
here.
Adams, Cooper Burnett, Daniel Study.
Wait, why are you looking at this?
Because we didn't know what the voice for spirit was, and then we looked it up. Matt Damon.
I'm never going to see the movie again without knowing that. Like, do not.
Isn't that movie with the horse?
Yeah,
Oh.
we
It's
just
Matt
found out that
Damon.
that the narrator that does the voice of spirit is Matt Damon. I didn't know that.
That's
said that-
weird.
You said that movie made
Yeah.
you cry, right?
That movie always makes me cry.
That movie makes you so
100%.
I mean, it doesn't even make you cry at the end. It's like in the middle. It's like
I feel
No.
like I feel
Towards
like
the,
I've watched
towards
it
the
before.
end when Spirit and the
I feel like I've watched it
when
before.
Rain, no, not Rain,
Alright,
the
so-
Indian guy.
Okay,
when they
okay.
So if we had
Let's not
something
get
like
off topic.
right.
That
So if we had something like
makes
this,
me
it's
cry.
not readily apparent which kind of mapping method we should use on this because we've got multiple angle changes. It is a cylindrical shape, but we'd have to do
Yeah.
like cylindrical here and cylindrical up here
Okay.
for it. If you get sufficient in what you're doing and you know where seams need to go,
Okay.
what you can do, and this is more of a higher process kind of thing. So what we could do is throw a planar map on it, which is not going to look good on the object. Let me assign a material to it real
When
fast so you
when
can
they
see
both
things
separate,
changing on the
it's
fly.
like
And it says that.
So
my
let's
heart
do,
shatters into like a
come
million
on.
pieces.
I didn't say that. And then
And then
Go.
the song.
All
All right, so it looks terrible right now. But if I know where I want my seams to go, I'm going to need a planar map for this,
Actually,
and I'll need a planar map for this because both of those are completely flat. And then if I wanted a seam going through this, and I wanted this to be kind of like a cylindrical map, I could select my seam going down this middle point, going basically from that seam up to that seam. And if we do polygons, cut UV edge, that'll make it so I now have my 3 different shells. So I can select the top piece, and we'll grab the body, and then we have the bottom right here as its own part. So without having to go through and individually map those pieces, what I can do if I'm utilizing one of those other 2 tools is I can select the shell, go to polygons, and then do my unfold, and probably made it super tiny. No, it exploded it. Okay, so that's a situation where that tool won't work. So we will use the Smooth UV tool instead.
They just don't need. They're so good.
Select over all the points,
where they are.
and then scale it
Like Spirit,
using the unfold. And now I have my shell again. So I'll do the same thing with this one. So grab unfold and do its thing, and now that's perfect. And with this one, I want the other one to work.
Oh yeah.
So I'm going to use unfold. So now it's gone through and it's made it as flat as it can. Now the downside to it is it didn't give me straight lines on any of this, and that's because of how it's doing those weird arcs and angles. But for the most part, there's not really a lot of distortion. There's a little bit of distortion here and a tiny bit here, and that's just because of how I built it. I didn't build it very well, and I didn't try to make it good. So it's going to look a little bit wonky. The downside to this tool is you're never going to have perfect straight edges. So if you wanted to go through and have straight edges, you'd have to manually go in and make those straight again, which would be a tedious nightmare. But it would be better than having to go through and using the cylindrical mapping or planar mapping to try to get those.
So this curved thing right here that I'm seeing before me actually needs to be straight.
It could be straight. It really depends on you, because if we decided that there's very little stretching in there and that's how I want it to be, then that's also fine.
Yeah, because I actually think this looks okay to me.
Yeah.
But it all depends on like the preference of like, say for instance, like the class, like it's required that this be straight, then you have to go ahead of it.
It's not usually going to be required to be straight. And we could also use a conjunction of the 2 tools. So I can go back and use this tool and try to unfold it and see if I can make it better. If I can't, this is a situation where using the relax can actually be useful. Because what I can do is just crush it a little bit and then try updating it and see if I get something better. And if I don't, then it's just not going to do anything different. So that's as good as this shape is going to get. The pluses and minuses to doing this is it does make it so you have less distortion, which will make it better if you're throwing your object into something like Substance Painter, where it's taking whatever you do to the model and automatically transferring that information to the UVs. So rather than painting texture here, I'm painting texture here, and it's finding that coordinates. So that would be great to have something like this.
Yeah.
But if I was going to take an object over into Photoshop and I was going to be painting on this, not painting on that, then having straight lines on this is actually going to be better for me. So it depends on how you're going to do your texture.
Like I saw the trailer for the show.
So there isn't a yes, no, like one is definitely better than the other. It really depends on your workflow and what you're planning to do with it. Okay.
It's
All
like
right,
it's like
thanks.
if I
Thank you
ever have
very,
kids
very
and they
much.
grow
You're
up to
welcome.
see the Spirit show, I'm like, kids, let me tell you about